afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Thursday, SecDataOps. I got to give it, listen, I want W's in chat for Robbie and those graphics. I got to give it to Robbie. He really outdid himself with the graphics for today's fight night. I love the graphics that Robbie does for the stream all the time, but I got to say the ones he's done for fight night have been absolutely amazing. So W's to Robbie for that one. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to our April 10th episode of SecDataOps, or Security Data Operations. This is our bi-monthly stream where we talk about everything security operations, everything data operations, and really the convergence of the two of those in the modern day cybersecurity team. You can tell like it's getting to that time of the day where my words are starting to mesh together. I'm going to hit the rules really fast before we talk about what today's stream is all about. So obviously the first and foremost rule is always the most important, right? No toxicity. What does that mean? We have a zero tolerance for any racist, sexist, misogynistic, or any otherwise toxic behavior in chat. There's a zero tolerance policy for that. We are streaming live across LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, and X. We do have moderators in each of those platforms. Huge shout out to our moderators. Who are here to keep chat free of any of that type of behavior as well. Our moderators make no qualms about utilizing that ban button in their respective platforms. Mods are not here, however, to stifle chat in any way. If you're new here to the stream, you know that we absolutely welcome and love friendly civil discourse and chat across whatever platform. And so we highly, highly encourage you to commune and participate in chat with your fellow cybersecurity professionals, whatever platform you happen to be tuning into us on. Love to see the chat hitting it up already, inside chat. So keep the chat flowing. With that being said, we have this very special SecDataOps today. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about our second rule, which is more of a reminder, which is around questions. We are going to do today's fight night debate style. And so what that means is that I'm going to be pitting two CISOs against each other, and I'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit. I want you to continue to still ask your questions in chat at any point in time. You could drop them in chat. Moderators are going to grab those chat questions and put them into a queue, and we will be presenting them to our debate panel audience or our debate panelist here during the stream. Unlike our normal streams where we can ask questions in real time, we're going to allow the debate participants to go at each other on their respective topics. And so we'll be aggregating the questions and then saving those for an audience dedicated section. Specifically around, some of the questions from the audience. And so it's all the more important that if you hear one of our debate panelists say something defending or promoting a particular topic that you're interested in, that you absolutely get that question in, and we'll do our best to address that question towards the end and allow that debate participant to respond to said question. With that being said, either way, bottom line is always get those questions in early. Don't wait till the last minute. That is kind of the benefit of this stream being live, is that you can get those questions in early, and we will get them to the respective people to get them answered ASAP. So with that being said, let's talk about today's stream. And with that being said, I'm actually going to bring in our debate panelist here.
One eternity later.
Okay, good. That transition worked. It's always skeptical whenever I do the transition. So I want to welcome our debate panelists. First and foremost, I want to welcome Rudy Ristich. Rudy's been here before. Rudy, say hi to stream. You've been here before.
Yeah, yo.
Hey. Thanks, Rudy, for coming back. Rudy is the CISO for Avant, the CISO and the CPO for Avant. Great, fantastic security, experience. He was on the stream a couple months ago. He did such a great job, and chat seemed to love him so well that we decided to ask him to come back. Rudy is going to be representing the skeptical anti-AI side of AI in the SOC. So he's here defending all those folks who think that AI is not here to take your jobs. AI is bad for the SOC. There's no way that AI can replace a SOC analyst. So Rudy is here defending that side of the equation. Paired beside him is somebody who's new to the stream. So let's give a huge cyber insecurity SecDataOps welcome to Kwak. I've had the privilege of knowing Q for a year and a half now. Q, I think we've known each other, something like that.
Yeah, it's about 2 years.
About 2 years, yeah. Q's the CISO at Pearson, former CISO at Morgan, E-Trade, bought by Morgan Stanley. Tons of years of experience, leading security teams for large financial companies. I've done dinner with Q a number of times. We've hung out at events together. I've talked to Q a lot. I absolutely love Q's perspective on this. Q is absolutely here representing the pro AI perspective. He's going to be here. He definitely believes in AI in the future of the SOC. He's very much leaning into it at Pearson. And in our conversations, you can tell that he's very, very immersed in a lot of the things that are going on with AI. Gentlemen, welcome to the stream. Before I cut loose with the first questions, I do want to remind our audience, this was actually asked in sub chat. They had asked me about you guys' operational, tactical level backgrounds. And I had assured chat that both of you are very, very smart, very, very technical, and very, very tactical. Rudy, really quick, starting with you, if you give us a quick synopsis of kind of like your operational on the ground, kind of experience and perspective on how you see the world.
Yeah, well, I started my career as a vulnerability researcher and then migrated into SOC analyst, security engineer, all the way up through managing security operations centers globally for a managed security service provider, and then into product groups. So I feel that rare sense of coming up through the technical chops. I know the job intimately. I know the ins and outs of what can and cannot be done and where the nuance lives. So I feel I'm well qualified to debate that side. So
absolutely. Q, over to you now as well.
It's great to be here. So I grew up more on the networking platform side, building high performance platforms and networks for trading systems, market makers. And then I ended up getting into security because of a lot of the various attacks that we started seeing at E-Trade. And then that was a combination of cyber and fraud. And with that, just really being able to enable the business to move at a fast pace, but keeping our customers safe.
Thank you for that, Q. So as you can see, chat, I did bring some folks who don't just sit on the podium of CISO. They've spent some time at the level with you in the SOC and in the operations center to kind of represent kind of both sides of this. With that being said, some really quick debate rules for my gentlemen on the panelist. I'm going to ask a question to one of you in either a pro or an anti-AI fashion in four respective areas. You'll have a few minutes to respond to that individually, and then I'll offer it up to rebuttals to your opposing candidate. Any questions, comments, or concerns about debate rules?
None.
Cool.
I'm good.
All right. First question is over to you, Q. Q, according to IBM's cost of data breach report in 2023, organizations leveraging AI and automation identified and contained breaches 28 days faster and saved nearly 1.8 million more than those that did not. Given these stats, do you believe AI should now be considered mandatory in modern SOCs? And how do you respond to critics who say these benefits are exaggerated?
I agree that it should be a part of the modern SOC. It's already there. Right? Some of the EDR tools that you use, some of the SIMs, and they already have AI built into it, whether you like it or not. So the more that you can start leveraging those capabilities, the more that you can start extending those capabilities, you're going to be able to identify potential risks faster, potential foothold situations faster, and then contain them before they become a breach. That's in terms of the IBM report. I think it's fairly accurate, but it's also tends to lean toward worst case or best case scenarios. Any one of us that have been involved in a breach, a lot of it is dependent on what's the scope, how much data do they acquire, and how sensitive is the data. So when they say that average is around $4 to $5 million for a breach, it varies. So the benefits will also vary. A lot of it's going to be situational. What's the benefit you can get? How fast can you identify challenges and issues, and then how quickly can you respond to them? But it definitely does reduce the time to identify and minimizes the dwell time.
Rudy, over to you for a rebuttal.
Yeah, I think cost to recover at an atomic level is probably aided by AI a little bit, but I think what IBM is overlooking in that report is they're probably not counting the cost to recover from errors that AI may make, and things like retraining models, adversarial people going after models and changing their techniques so previous detections no longer work is a big reality that likely costs a lot of money in retraining and being able to develop these technologies, redeploy them, sanitize data, and ensure data quality is going to be a perennial, like ongoing cyclical challenge that we have. So I don't believe that report would capture that kind of total cost of ownership of managing systems like this at scale.
Q, any rebuttal to Rudy's statement there?
Yeah, I think that's already happening today. And let's take AI out of the mix. I mean, people are already doing that work. They're making mistakes. They're sanitizing data, trying to understand where it is. This will allow you to do things faster and more efficiently. And it's not saying that there won't be mistakes. And that's why you need to make sure there are guardrails in place that allow you to identify potential anomalous patterns, even just basic data sanitization, data migration, any of that kind of stuff. We're already monitoring that, right? So you just got to make sure that you understand what the heartbeat looks like, and then you can respond to it and ensure that your models are effective.
All right, this is going to be over to you, Rudy. Feel free again. If I didn't know if I caught a breath there, Rudy. If you want to respond to Q, let me know. But feel free to. You good? Okay. So question 2 is actually over to you, Rudy. Proponents of AI argue that AI-powered analytics can sift through millions of data points far faster than human analysts, drastically reducing alert fatigue. With AI-based triage now claiming over 90% accuracy in some platforms, and the source for this is Palo Alto's Cortex's XSIAM demo at RSAC in 24, why wouldn't every SOC be moving in that direction?
Yeah, I'd argue that, are we looking at triage accuracy in the aggregate, or are we looking at across environments that are homogeneous? One thing I don't believe, or we've run into actually, is how can specific data to our environment and our platform be triaged and learned effectively with AI, especially if we have like a smaller subset. I don't come from a massive environment. We have like a smaller one that probably takes a longer time to train and create a baseline, and it might be good at something like the level of a service provider where they have a very large sample size to train over and over again. But I'm to some extent reticent and skeptical that we'd be able to achieve that same claim in an environment that's smaller and takes longer to realize that value. So that's where I would stand against that claim right forward there.
Q, rebuttal to that?
Depending on the environment, I think when you talk about smaller environments, there's probably things that you can gain efficiencies from related to just the commodity type attacks, right? So if you talk about ransomware, ransomware, it's pretty straightforward. And being able to leverage AI to make those detections and mitigations pretty quickly really protects your company from that. And it also brings capacity back to your security operators to focus on things that are very unique to your business. And it also gives you time for the AI, for you to train the AI to understand the specifics of the business and what's the real value area that you want the AI to focus on that can give you capacity, that can give you speed and accuracy. It doesn't mean that you're going to do everything, but it's really about where's the most value and where do you really need the speed and effectiveness.
Rudy, you want to rebut to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm not going to dispute the value in commodity attacks and detecting commodity things, and I think by and large we've done very well at that, and AI is going to help improve that from that perspective. But the things that keep me up at night the most are the bespoke and unique things that are unique to our environment and our stack and our tooling. And specifically, I think you can probably appreciate with your background of fraud at E-Trade, like fraud is extremely iterative, and it's a game of whack-a-mole where one attack will succeed quickly over a weekend, and then we can put countermeasures in place that largely defeat that. But then within another couple of weekends, we've got adversaries that have tested and detected new attacks, and I think those things are the type of things that we want to put the best technology and horsepower against. And I think AI has a long way to go until it gets there and is effective at that. Taking care of the commodities, that's nice, but then does the expense and cost of deploying and training AI make up for those commodity results at the expense of the things that are more impactful, but maybe like a little bit less likelihood, a little bit more difficult to detect with artificial intelligence? So
Q, since Rudy invoked your time at E-Trade, I want to give you an opportunity to rebut to that as well.
Sure. So a lot of the fraud that we saw was the initial ones were commodity based, right? And then they would start to tune and figure out and probe and figure out how do you get around a lot of the controls or measures that you have. Using AI, you can actually get into a lot of details and do the analysis quicker. So let me give you an example. When we got into the data around user agent strings, it would take my team maybe a couple hours to 24 hours, depending on sophistication. We would look at how are fonts being displayed, and then it would give you an indicator. Are they using an emulator? That font looks very strange, and that's not the way it typically is represented. So it looks like they're using a Linux box to emulate a Windows box, right? So it took us time to do that. But using AI, a lot of those things you can discover pretty quickly. And that's what I mean by commodity. Those are pretty standard tactics. And then using AI, you can discover those very quickly to get rid of those or block those outright. And then understand what are the potential patterns that you could see in the future, or also what are they doing to potentially get around your controls. That's where AI becomes interesting. It doesn't mean it's going to replace humans in terms of thinking, but I think what it can do is that it can iterate very quickly around all the options, and then humans will take a look at it and figure out here's the most probable ones that we want to focus on.
Okay. Moving on to question 3. Q, this is going to be for you first on this one. Gartner predicts that by 2026, 60% of SOCs will rely heavily on AI for tier 1 and tier 2 triage work. What do you say to organizations still staffing large tier 1 analyst teams? Are they wasting money, or is there a balanced middle ground?
It's going to take time, but they need to start using AI to really understand their environment, as Rudy mentioned. The sooner you get into the ecosystem, having AI brought into play and really understanding nuances of your environment is going to help you ensure that you got the proper staffing. But the other thing it's going to do is that it's also going to train your talent that you currently have really how to effectively use AI. You don't just go in there and just say, all right, let me ask the AI question. There is a skill set required to actually prompt AI effectively to get the right answers, and also to continue to challenge it so that you're validating the answers. That's a skill set that needs to be nurtured and developed. That's why universities out there are actually having classes around this to help individuals. And also a lot of companies are having classes to educate and learning frameworks to educate their employees in terms of how to use AI effectively to become more efficient at your job. And that's what's going to happen within the SOC, is that you're going to see initial entries, people learning how to effectively use it, and then eventually getting to a point where you've got people at the tier 2 level that can really, really do some interesting things with AI. Very similar to how we started with query in the early days, right? We had people asking questions, and then afterwards, like, show me the script. And that's how a lot of my SOC learned how to effectively script to find anomalous patterns within the data.
So Rudy, I saw you scribbling really fast on your notepad down there. Do you have a rebuttal to that one?
I'm just trying to be polite. Yeah, it's like, okay. So one thing I love about what Q said, I believe, like a lot of what makes me reticent about AI is I feel it's one of those, and this is not just like within the SOC. I think it's most AI that I see people using is I wish there was like a driver's license or something where people will get qualified to use some of this stuff before they start, prompting and regurgitating garbage all across the internet. But I think that's largely something that we need to be careful of as this technology proliferates. Is how can we enable the tier 1s, to kind of graduate to tier 2 work, but also put the time in to ultimately learn those tier 1 chops to be able to, I guess, double check the AI to ensure that it's doing accurate analysis or providing accurate information back, so that if there is some kind of error or problem, we can catch that without having to kind of like shift the problem to, instead of needing, like maybe a dozen tier 1 operators and one tier 3 person, how can we avoid having to have like 4 or 5 tier 3 level aptitude people, because there's such a skill gap that we create that, basically tier 1s and tier 2s take a longer time getting to develop those skills because they aren't doing it as deliberately as they would and before they had the tools to do it longhand, like always using a calculator for calculus before learning the underlying algorithms and doing it longhand, that type of a thing.
Q, do you want to send a rebuttal to that one?
I don't disagree with you, but I'm going to use the example of early days of Splunk. It would aggregate a lot of data for you and give you basic information. And then they started to build models. Do we actually train people on the basics of those models, or do we leverage their sophisticated models and then respond to the outcomes of it? And that's what I'm seeing with the future state of AI, is that we're going to continue down that path. We're going to have specialists. You're never going to get away from specialists that really dig into it and challenge it. And that's where you really need to focus on people. I'm going to refer to it as the challenger or the red teaming group, to make sure that the AI is still doing what it should be doing. But not everyone that's going to be at a tier 2 or tier 1 level is going to be doing that. You're going to have a specialist group, and that's how things are going to evolve.
Okay. So that was section 1. We're going to move into section 2 now.